Hey, Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7. We're at episode number 1727 today. Thank you so much for joining me for it. Thank you so much for subscribing, for rating, for reviewing, and to all the patrons who help make this possible every single day. Thank you so much for your support at patreon.com/SW7x7, and more patrons are always welcome. So today we're continuing our series. I'm continuing my series of previews for Star Wars Celebration Chicago, and today we are moving on to Saturday's events. And as I mentioned in previous episodes, there is so much to take advantage of at Star Wars Celebration Chicago that there's absolutely no way any one person could possibly do it all. And so for these purposes, for our purposes together here on the show, what I'm going to be talking about are the biggest events in terms of breaking news, new information that we're going to learn about Star Wars stories that are coming in the future. And by that marker, there are definitely three things that absolutely are on your list of must attends. And I'd say there may be two others, but yeah, Saturday is going to be a tough day. I've got some honorable mentions that I want to throw in there as well. A couple of them, not necessarily news-breaking ones, but we'll get to those. Also, I guess I should warn you, Saturday and Sunday are going to be an absolute clusterfest. At least that's based on previous celebration attendance, whereas Thursday, Friday, and Monday, people, aren't necessarily off work at the same level. Oh man, Saturday and Sunday, those days will get nutty. So yeah, it's a good day to be staying inside for panel discussions and whatnot. And so the top three, I would say, are first of all, Galaxy's Edge. And in fact, that panel is the lottery panel of the day. That's going to be the one where you're just going to register for it and hope that you are in either on a live stage or on one of the streaming stages. Just keep your fingers crossed because, if they're treating it like that, that means that there's going to be some sort of major news that's announced related to Galaxy's Edge. And considering the fact that we've already been told that the events of Galaxy's Edge, as in when you as a park goer go to Galaxy's Edge, you're stepping into a world that's happening very soon prior to the events of Episode 9, then yeah, anything related to Episode 9 is going to be big news. And obviously we're going to have some Episode 9 news the prior day in Friday. So I think we might get some more Episode 9 related news from this one as well. The second thing that you're going to want to keep an eye out for is a gaming thing. And I think this is my only gaming recommendation out of the 5 days. Not to say, again, that there aren't other cool gaming things to pursue. In fact, there's an honorable mention that we'll talk about today in that regard. But from a big breaking news perspective, Jedi Fallen Order is going to have some sort of worldwide debut situation. They're going to share with us a whole bunch more information. And obviously they've said, hey, it follows a Padawan after the events of Order 66. And so we know that much, but we're going to learn a heck of a lot more as a result of the Jedi Fallen Order panel that happens on Saturday. And then the absolute other gotta go to from a story breaking perspective is the Marvel Comics panel. It's the only panel that's going to deal with comic related stuff. So yeah, I think that's absolutely a must visit situation. By the time that this happens, by the time Celebration Chicago happens, we should start to get some information about the Age of Rebellion comics, which is the maxi series of comics that started with Age of Republic and then Age of Rebellion and then Age of Resistance is going to be the one that happens in the final 4 months of the year. And I imagine that we're going to hear some announcements about Age of Resistance, which is also awesome because then we're going to get to find out about the time space potentially between episode 8 and 9, and probably also some information about the space in between Bloodline and The Force Awakens, that 6 years where we still know very little about the development of the Resistance. So I think the Marvel Comics panel will be very useful for that particular knowledge-filling situation. And if I have to choose two others, I would throw in, as I mentioned yesterday about augmented reality and virtual reality and how that really is going to be the future of Star Wars storytelling. There is a panel called Step Into Our Stories that's about ILM X Lab. And they're not saying necessarily that they're going to tell us what new things they have in store, but they're going to talk about their thought process behind making the stories and have a lot of the people who help develop them and make them happen present. And I think that's going to be a highly interesting panel, even if they're not necessarily breaking new news per se, but the potential certainly exists for it. And lastly, of my top 5, there's going to be a Del Rey behind the scenes panel, and they are saying in the description that they're going to talk about new books coming in 2019 and beyond, and people like Claudia Gray and Tim Zahn are going to be on this panel. You know, there's going to be a Lucasfilm Publishing panel the day prior on Friday. We talked about that already. So it's, hard to think that they're going to, reveal more stuff during this panel, but I certainly suppose it's possible, especially when you consider that folks on the Disney Publishing or Disney Lucasfilm Press side of the house, are going to be present at the Lucasfilm Publishing panel. So maybe the Del Rey behind the scenes one is going to be more focused on the adult targeted novels, and the Disney Lucasfilm one or the Lucasfilm Publishing one is going to be focused more on young adult and younger, perhaps. I mean, it's a possibility. It's one way of potentially looking at it, but I think the Del Rey one, they're going to save something for it. So I think that's worth checking out as well. I've got 3 honorable mentions that I want to call to your attention as well in just a moment here. But first, I do want to remind you to subscribe to Star Wars 7x7 wherever you like to get it. And I hope you will consider supporting me in my journey to Celebration Chicago and bringing you wall-to-wall coverage from there by joining me at patreon.com/SW7x7. So, honorary mentions. First of all, the Rebels Remembered panel. And they actually took pains to say, nope, we're not going to be announcing a new series at this panel. Like, they've added a disclaimer so that way nobody gets their hopes up about it. Does that mean that we're not going to hear anything new or interesting? I don't think so. I think we will probably hear something new and interesting. I mean, if Dave Filoni is involved with this panel, chances are he's going to tease something. Another thing that's happening on Saturday is a Fantasy Flight Games panel. And one of the things that I have not covered on the podcast, which would actually be kind of interesting, I think, are the role-playing games, and specifically the source books that they have for the role-playing games, because there's a lot of world-building information that's happening in those role-playing source books, and it's a lot of information that would be really kind of useful and valuable to your understanding of Star Wars and my understanding of Star Wars as it's being reformulated in this new canon era. So, there's definitely, I think, an interesting value to going to that one as well. I think you might learn something new about the Star Wars galaxy that you didn't know before. And the last one, the last honorable mention, not necessarily least, but just the last honorable mention, it's Sisters of the Force, a celebration of women and Star Wars. And it's moderated by Ashley Eckstein, who's the voice of Ahsoka Tano. And so far announced on the panel, they say they've got more surprises up their sleeve. But Vanessa Marshall, who's the voice of Hera Syndulla, and Catherine Tabor, who is the voice of Padme from the Clone Wars, and Amy Ratcliffe, who is now an associate editor with Nerdist and was formerly podcasting with Full of Sith and also Lattes with Leia. Actually, I don't know if she's still doing Lattes with Leia. I should find that out for sure, but she's also hosting one of the stages at Celebration as well. And if there's one book from last year, one reference book at least, that I did not get around to, and I'm bummed that I haven't gotten around to it yet, it's her Women of the Galaxy book. And it's a fantastic looking book, at least from, the excerpts I've seen. And so, yeah, that's one that is on my list to, work myself around to. I'm really excited about it and excited for Amy getting the book published. And so this whole Sisters of the Force situation, I think, is going to be a really interesting time as well. I think it's going to be a great discussion and absolutely worth the time of anybody who goes into that panel too. And so that is going to do it for today's episode of the show. Thank you so much for joining me for it, as always. And may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
This podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox. It is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other related Star Wars items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2019 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.